for IPWatchdog Life Sciences 2023. This is our second annual event. We're looking forward to having about 48 hours worth of conversation. So we start at 2 o'clock with registration on Monday, and we will end, lunch will be over by 2 o'clock on Wednesday. Have a all-star cast of people who will be speaking, and none has the credentials superior to our first speaker today. So let me introduce Sherry Knowles, and Sherry really needs no introduction. She's won every award, been recognized in every list that's relevant over the last, well, I won't say how long, that would not be polite.
Please,
but
thank you.
I've known Sherry, and I won't say how long I've known you, but I've known you for a long time, and we've been good friends, and she's been a great supporter of mine, and that doesn't just mean that sponsoring our events. Sherry's been a great supporter for many, many years before pretty much anybody even knew who Jean Quinn really was in this industry, and I can't thank her enough. Well, we introduced her in their inaugural class a year ago into our Hall of Fame. She is the former Chief Patent Counsel in charge of intellectual property litigation, also at GlaxoSmithKline. Many of you will remember she saved the industry back in 07 into 08 when the Patent Office was trying to limit the number of claims and continuations we could have. And we could go on, but we really want to get to the conversation. Sherry, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Oh, what a great pleasure. I love it. I love being here with IP Watchdog, among all these great friends. So thank you for asking me.
Sure, no problem. And let's just get right to it. And just so you all know, this is not rehearsed at all. But it's not to say that Sherry and I don't know, I think, what each other are going to say here, because we talk about these issues a lot. But what you wanted to talk about today was trying to balance the incentives, better balance the incentives to make sure that we get the innovation that we need and want. What did you have in mind when you offered that topic?
Well, I think you turned it into, was it fixing the IP system? What's the title of this talk? I think you need to read that out.
Yeah, it's fixing the U.S. patent system
to realign incentives. And we only have a half an hour to do that, by the way. So, you know, in typical Jean fashion, Jean and I have had 0 phone calls about this topic, and so we're going live, and we're all, I think we're on board. So, you know, when I was thinking about what can I talk about in 30 minutes about the patent system as it pertains to biopharmaceuticals, we all know what kind of dire strait it's in. But I thought it'd be good to just take a minute and think about the law of inverse consequences, okay, and what's happened with regard to laws that have been passed in the past, and how did they work out, okay? What was the goal and what was the result? So you think about an extreme example of effective law in pharma. We're now at the 10-year anniversary of Myriad Genetics. You've seen a lot of talk about that. There have been a lot of articles. People on the AMP side have done a big 10-year clap for the 10-year anniversary. The goal there was to free up isolated natural products for everyone to use. Okay, so it's 10 years later, did that work? Of course not. 10 years later, what happened? The natural products industry became an extinct dinosaur. There is no natural product industry anymore. The VCs will not invest in a company in natural products, and there's really no company that wants to go in that space. So when you think about the natural products, isolated natural products that have had an effect on our lives, you think about aspirin, penicillin, vancomycin, erythromycin, adriamycin, Taxol, tetracycline, Epogen. Those are all ways of the past. We're never going to have drugs like that again. And I think that's pretty shocking. Was that an unintended consequence? I think so. I don't think the judges realized when they said we're going to make isolated natural products available for all, that what that actually means is they're making it available for nobody. I just want to quote a couple of the lines from Justice Thomas in the big Myriad Genetics case. I see a smile on Jean's face when I say that.
Because he got so much wrong, but he did it with such confidence.
You know, we haven't gone back to read Myriad in a while because that's just ancient history. But it's not, because now we're living it. We'll never have any of those powerhouse, wonderful drugs again because companies are not going to make them. Just one of the things that Justice Thomas said, there's a considerable danger that the grant of patents would tie up the use of such tools and inhibit future innovation. So what has happened? By not tying up these and making them free to all, it inhibited future innovation. That's the law of inverse consequences. That's exactly what happened. The opposite of what he said, right? Another one, groundbreaking, innovative, even brilliant discovery is not patentable. Well, guess what? You won't have any more of those. You won't have any more groundbreaking, innovative, brilliant discovery of isolated natural products in nature. I, along with Brent Bellows, who I just saw walk in, my partner Brent, Matt Higgins from Georgia Tech, wrote an article in 2014 about the use of natural products in pharmaceutical research. And we actually, Georgia Tech has an enormous database that's contributed to the university that they can tap into that's usually really expensive. And he went in and he found that between the years 2000 and 2011, there were 31 billion doses of those natural products taken that I just mentioned: aspirin, penicillin, vancomycin, erythromycin, adriamycin, Taxol, tetracycline, workhorse, tetracycline, Epogen. We're not making those anymore. No more of the fermentation products of bacteria. Bacteria are pretty smart. You know, they know how to make drugs, and that's it. So we're not going to get that anymore. And we just call that a dinosaur. Okay, the second, law of inverse consequences, Hatch-Waxman Act of 1984. So what was the Hatch-Waxman Act, of course, was supposed to be a compromise between the innovators and the generics. It was passed 49 years ago. Can you believe that? 49 years ago? So anybody in this room that's less than 49, and Jean, you and I should raise our hands. Judge Michelle, that's right. Yeah, less than 49. If you're less than 49 years old, you weren't even alive when they passed the Hatch-Waxman Act. Okay, 1984. So what was the goal? Part of the goal of the Hatch-Waxman Act was to give pharmaceutical companies some assurance that they would have enough time on the market to recoup their investment and then maybe start making a profit. Okay, and so that's what they were hoping would do, but that was in 1984 dollars. So what was the terrible mistake that was made in the Hatch-Waxman law? It's that they neglected to include an index for inflation. Okay, how could they take 5 years and not have an index for inflation in the law? So, you know, Judge Lurie, who's in the Federal Circuit, of course, he was one of the writers of the Hatch-Waxman Act. He used to be at SmithKline, you know, my alma mater. And I asked him, where'd that 5 years come from? And he said, oh, that was just back at the napkin. There was no economic analysis. He said, people just sat down and they said, oh, 3 years, 6 years, how about 5 years? Okay, how about 5 years? There was no economic basis for the selection of 5 years. Now we're here 49 years later, and it's still 5 years. How could that be possible? Okay, so I just thought we'd just walk through some of the economics. So here are economic comparisons in 1984. Median house price in 1984 was $80,000. Okay, median house price today, and this is not like a top house, median house, $410,000. Okay, a salary in 1984, $31,000. Salary in 2023, over $91,000. And if you use a rate of 2.76% per year inflation from 1984 to 2022, the cumulative price increase is 182%. Now, what are we doing with the same 5-year, you know, regulatory data exclusivity that was supposed to allow for pharmaceutical companies to recoup their money, plus start making a return on their investment with a number that was picked 49 years ago? There's no way that works. The math just doesn't work. So instead, what do we have? We have the opposite, law of inverse consequences. We have incentives for litigation while companies are still in the red. They haven't even made their money back, their investment yet, before they've ever started to make dime one of their profit under the Hatch-Waxman Act. So at this point, it's not what it was intended to be, not what it was intended to be. So you've got, you've got 5 years. You can't recoup your investment. Companies are still in the red, okay? And then 3 years for formulations. I mean, that's just a pure joke at this point. 3 years, and then the generics can sue you as soon as you get on the market, is no comfort at all to a company, zero comfort. It's really basically, it's not worth it. One of the companies that we represent is a small, very small company in North Carolina that has a drug which is an infusion drug for newborns with cancer. They spent 10 years, $75 million to get this drug on the market. Now, for a big company, $75 million is not a lot of money to get a drug on the market. But for a tiny little startup, 10 years and $75 million, that's a lot of money. It's a lot of time. They were sued within 3 months in the ANDA litigation. They didn't even have time, not even to try to make up their money. They just had generics, just knocking at their door. And why? Because it's a formulation patent. And formulation patents are very difficult to defend in court, given the present day problems with obviousness and what we're seeing today. So then you have to ask, was it worth it to have a drug on the market to help babies having chemo that takes 10 years and $75 million to get on the market, when they're going to get sued within 3 months, and they're going to rack up all these attorney's fees and basically potentially go out of business? How is that a business model? It makes no sense at all.
Can I stop you there?
Yes, please.
Because what I'd like to, do you think that they care whether pharmaceutical companies can stay in business or not? I mean, because the point that you make is, this is not a sustainable business model, and it's just not. And a lot of that is owed to the science. It's not that pharmaceutical companies aren't trying to be successful 100% of the time. It's just that they're successful much closer to 10% of the time. And that's just science involved for a whole host of reasons. But it doesn't strike me that anybody really cares. I mean, anybody in power at least really cares or understands.
I mean, I think that's a great question, Gene, because we have to ask ourselves as a society, do we want cheap drugs or do we want new drugs? Because we probably can't have both.
Well, you see, and the frustrating thing is you just can't have them both today. I mean, you can have them in 10 years from now, or what, on average about 14 years, 13, 14 years. Some quicker, some a little bit longer, but the next generation is whatever the greatest drug of the moment is. The next generation is going to pay very little for that drug. Yeah. And it's frustrating, and
But it takes profit today. You actually have to have a return on your investment. You actually have to be making a profit on the drugs that are on the market today in order to invest in the drugs of tomorrow.
Right.
And if you're gonna knock down the patent protection, if you're gonna knock down the laws, if you're gonna do all this, that's gonna take out that margin for the drug of tomorrow. And so, that's what's happening here. So I'll give you number 3.
Go
Ready
ahead.
for number 3?
Yep.
Okay. The new IRA law, it was passed in 2023. We already have unintended consequences of that one. And what do you think those are? It's that they've built in the fact that small molecules will get, only guaranteed 7 years from FDA approval, and then 2 years for the negotiation. So you're at 9 years, but you're at 13 years for biologics. So any company that is doing good corporate governance is going to say, we have to invest in biologics and not in small molecules, because we can't lose that 4 years on the market. Okay, so we already see that in clients that we're representing, that they're pushing their product line from small molecules to biologics because they need that extra time period to get a recoup on their investment. So Why is that? So first you have the Hatch-Waxman Act, which, at this point is way out of whack. You have the biologic BPCA, so you've got 12-year for biologic. So you have two indicators. You've got regulatory exclusivity that goes to 12 years. Now you've got the IRA that's basically paying you more to be a biologic. Okay. So what does that mean? It means it's going to be pushing the market. All these companies are going to have to get pushed into biologics. Well, small molecules are great. You take them home, you can keep them in your purse, you can, you pop one when you need it. You take it at night at home. The small molecules are great, and they've been the mainstay of our healthcare system. But there's no longer an incentive for small molecules, and I'm really scared that the market is going to get away from our great small molecule therapies, new small molecule therapies, and go all towards biologics. Now, biologics are also great. We love our biologics. They're biologicals, the anti-cancers, all of the Humiras, all of the great drugs that we need. Those are infusion drugs. So basically, when you have a biologic, you're also having to pay to go get an infusion or get a shot. So it's not a Medicare Part D, and I'm no expert in Medicare, but it's not a Medicare Part D. It's maybe a B. And so you're pushing it back into the Medicare system, which is still going to cost the government money. And I think that's crazy. So I think companies are changing their research efforts. We see that now when people are coming to us. Oh, I think we can change that drug into a biologic. If we just add this, then it'll go through CBER instead of CDER, and then we'll get extra 4 years. That's what we're hearing from clients now. Is that where we want to be as a society? I don't think so. We destroyed small molecule, the natural products. Now we're going after small molecules. We're all going to be, I'm going to be seeing all of you at the infusion ward. That's where we're going to be, because that's where you're going to have to get your medicines, because that's where the companies will get their payback. It's kind of like the government is going to become a statutory generic at year 9, for small molecules. And it's worse, actually, because if the government can come in and negotiate at 9 and negotiate the price down, that's without regard to patent rights. At least if you're going to do an ANDA litigation or something like that, you're hoping with fingers crossed that your patent is going to hold up, and you're going to be able to keep it for the whole term of the patent. But now with the IRA, it's a statutory generic at 9 years. If you're one of the unlucky ones selected, you're just going to get a price cut, and there's not a lot you can do about it. Okay, the result, either patents don't matter or they matter a lot less, at least in the IRA context.
So let me ask you that question, because it seems to me that a lot of folks that are trying to weaken the patent system in this area and trying to get, and we're going to be talking about this throughout the next few days, and price controls and that sort of thing, and these lies that they tell to get their way. One of the big lies to me is that patents are responsible for the cost of drugs.
Yeah.
Now that's an easy sell for a billboard, and those folks in the DC area know that during the pandemic we lived with billboards everywhere at bus stops. Patents kill. Patents don't kill. Patents save lives.
Yeah.
But there's this mentality that's out there that patents kill, that drugs are high because patents exist. And it's like this fairy tale land where nobody wants to admit that science is uncertain, the FDA process is long, and this all costs billions of dollars with a B.
Yeah. I think that also goes under my law of inverse consequences, Gene, because you say, be careful what you ask for. Because what they're asking for is get rid of the patent system, right? They're asking for cheap drugs. So basically, they want to push the pendulum toward cheap drugs, no patents. Well, if that's the system you want, that's fine. But then what that does is freezes healthcare to where we are today. So if we think that all the diseases have been cured, if we think we have enough drugs, if we think that all these cancers have done what they, we have answers for all the cancers and all the heart disease and everything else we need, we don't need any new drugs. We're done. We're finished. Okay, and I think that's going to be the law of unintended consequences if they keep pushing it, because there won't be enough money in the system to create these new wonderful drugs that we need. Like, I'm of the opinion, and I'm going to guess most of the people are here too, that we do need more drugs. That we have not cured cancer yet. We have not fixed all the problems that we need. We have all kinds of issues that we need to solve, and we're going to solve those through great drugs. And we've got wonderful scientists in this country. We've got the most brilliant scientists in the world here trying to crack these problems on a daily basis. But they need some support. They need motivation. They need to know that their work is not going to be in vain.
Well, and they need funding.
And they need funding. And they need funding.
And without the rights to secure this, the funding doesn't exist. I mean,
that's right.
It's so fundamentally easy to understand, and it's frustrating that people don't get it, because this is, and again, I'll go back to, it's unpredictable, it's highly speculative, a lot of trial and error. You can think you have a great drug, and it turns out that it didn't work for a variety of different reasons, and you don't know that until you've spent hundreds of millions of dollars or more sometimes, right? Yeah. And so somebody has to pay for it. But in an area where it's speculative like this, and you rely on investors are not going to invest unless they can get a reasonable, and perhaps more than reasonable based on the risk. And there's a lot of risk here. And I just think, people get it in other contexts. Like, pick your favorite sports team. If they are likely going to get slaughtered this weekend, will you bet on them? Well, no. Well, what if I give you 10 to 1? What if I give you 100 to 1?
Right.
Well, at some level, you're going to realize, well, maybe they do have a chance. And if you give me 100 to 1, okay, I'll lay $10 down on that. And we live in that world ourselves. But it doesn't translate to this area which is so fundamentally important for us to have these drugs. And it's not. I thought for sure that as the Supreme Court got older, that their views would change on this.
Yeah.
And they don't seem to have.
They need some anti-aging medicines, right? Right. I know you're exactly right. The model is insane. No rational person would go into this business model. When you say, gee, I've got X amount of money, I think, and I can invest it in any industry to make a profit, and say, oh, okay, I'm going to invest it in an industry where I'm going to, let's say, find a new widget, but it's going to take me 10,000 widgets to figure out which one works. And then after I figure out which of those widgets work, then I've got to do product development, and I've got to do it while the government's watching me, and I've got to do it with a whole lot of machines. And then after I do it with a whole lot of machines, at the end of the day, at the end of 10 years, I'll get a letter in the mail from the government telling me whether I can put that on the market. Who would ever do that? Who would ever do that model? Right. You'd have to be insane to do that model. And you're putting the first 12 years in at risk. And instead of calling it a drug, call it a widget, And it just, the model doesn't make sense. And the only reason why it works is because we've got diseases and they need to be cured,
Right, but the thing that's frustrating to me is, as you know, and as probably most people know, I'm an electrical engineer. So I come at this from a policy perspective, from having watched my mother die of cancer, having watched a lot of things that a lot of people have dealt with, and then also having had some issues myself, needing hip replacement and stuff, and you want better drugs, and you don't want them to be as addictive, right? I mean, these are all things that we all want.
Right.
But it seems to me, watching this industry from afar, that pharmaceutical companies have to almost be apologetic for hitting a grand slam home run, right? And that's not what we want. We want to encourage them.
Oh, no.
They'd be better off. You say anti-aging. Well, fighting cancer, to me, that would seem to fall into that category.
Yeah.
But if you do and you actually succeed and you have a pill that you could take and it would kill all the cancer in your body, God help the regulation you're going to be facing. But if you've come up with some anti-aging cream that is going to get sold in an infomercial
by Kardashians,
by Kardashians after midnight, nobody cares. Make as much as you want. And it seems like to me this is a Monty Python get turned on its head. It's like, no, we should want the one that's actually going to keep you alive and reward that, not the not the anti-aging cream that may or may not work in the first place. I just find it, the incentive structure is all exactly backwards.
It is. It is. And then you even see, as we see ads on buses, you see, and now we're getting hit with ads on TV that are just, it's the government patting itself on the back for the IRA and saying that they got, they were the ones who got the pharmaceutical companies to their knees, to, in quote, voluntarily negotiate drug prices, which I'm sure we'll hear more about in the next panel. I'm not going to go into that because I know there's more coming.
Yeah, that's just the biggest, all of these are the biggest lie. It's impossible.
Incredible.
It's impossible to pick the biggest lie in this area because it's, and it's been said before that, the way that you get people to believe in your side is you just have to lie big and often. And there are some whoppers in this space.
Oh, yeah. No, it's really, really frustrating. It's the worst. Okay, my last one, law of inverse consequences. But this one is on, of course, my favorite subject, the Constitution. So is the Constitution, do you have to take it at face value? I mean, we would say yes, that's what our government is made of. We have a framework, and we need to honor the framework of our government. When you dishonor the Constitution, everything goes wacky. Why? Because you have no guardrails. If you have no guardrails, then the patent office or the courts can come up with any law they want because they're not basing it on the Constitution, and they're not feeling that they're beholden to a higher power, which should be the Constitution. We actually have a subcommittee on the Constitution, which is in the House and in the Senate. I've never seen a subcommittee of Congress ever address the fact that the courts are not abiding by the laws passed by Congress. Wouldn't that be a nice discussion to have? Wouldn't that be a nice discussion to have? I don't know if we could ever get that, but we actually have two big subcommittees on the Constitution. What have they ever done?
Nothing that I know
What
of.
have they done? Why aren't they out there saying, hey, courts, we're in Congress, these are our congressional laws, you're supposed to abide by them.
Well, it's not only that, Sherry. It's like you said before where you started with Justice Thomas. He wrote, and as you read, literally said discoveries, no matter how innovative they are, no matter how groundbreaking they are not patentable.
Right.
Well, that's exactly the opposite of what the Constitution says. It's exactly the opposite of what the Patent Act says.
Right.
But somehow that then becomes in polite, educated conversation in D.C. and constitutional circles, like, oh, it's so brilliant. He's so genius about when he says this. And people who disagree with him about everything probably think that's, well, at least he got that one right. No, he got that one definitively wrong.
Yeah. Well, how about in the 1952 Patent Act, there was a definition of invention added, which said invention can be an invention or discovery. That's 35 U.S.C. 100. Mm-hmm. They put it in there, and that was probably because of Funk Brothers, because they didn't like Funk Brothers. And so they actually put into the statute that invention can be a discovery. What happened to that? What happened to that? That's what I'm saying. Where is our subcommittee on the Constitution? I don't think it exists. I don't know what it's looking at.
No, I don't know either. But I don't know. I'm at a loss. I don't know what to say. I mean, because these answers to these questions are so simple and straightforward, and yet they're wrong. I mean, they get it wrong all the time. It almost seems like if you're trying to predict what Congress and the courts are going to do in this area is figure out what is correct and then bet everything that they're going to do the exact opposite.
Yeah. And they probably will. Absolutely. Well, we have to say we do have a new act, Patent Eligibility Restoration Act of 2023. I'm sure Judge Michelle was very involved in that, and I'm sure Phil was involved. It was a C4IP and the other trade orgs were involved, and we really love that. I absolutely love the statement in that bill, just very simply, all judicial exceptions to patent eligibility are eliminated. What a simple sentence.
Yeah, it overrules.
Isn't that amazing?
It overrules
what a
the Supreme
great
Court.
sentence. It's just fabulous. I've actually read it several times just to make myself feel better. Just to make myself feel better. Now, does that bill have any chance of passing? Who knows? Certainly not in an election year, but we hope that it'll keep rolling. Patent bills usually take a number of years to actually get through, and a lot of discussions and midnight hours. But I hope that one keeps going, and thanks to all the trade orgs and everybody involved with that. But then the twin sister of 101, of course, is double patenting. Okay, the non-statutory, judicially created. Who did that? Whoever wrote that title did it before they started thinking that, oh, maybe I shouldn't call it that. Non-statutory, judicially created. What a mission against interest that one was. Okay, doctrine of ODP. And of course, we're going to have a panel on that tomorrow, which I'll be pleased to give my comments on that tomorrow about in-ray select, et cetera. So we can stay tuned for that. But we're not so lucky in the double patenting space as we were to maybe get at least a bill out on patent eligibility. And in fact, we're hearing the opposite, I guess, that there's some rumblings that they want to take away terminal disclaimers but keep obviousness type double patenting, or I don't know, all kinds of, I can't even understand, some of these things. I think if they got rid of terminal disclaimers and they got rid of obviousness double patenting, then I think the law would go back to what it's supposed to be, which is statutory law, 103. Just apply 103 the way it's supposed to be applied, and it seems like it would be fine. But
yeah, and we'll talk more about that tomorrow.
Yes.
But before I let you go, do you have any final parting thoughts as we kick off the conference today?
I just say be bold. Be bold. We have to have conversations out there. We are not getting the message out there. I don't think it's the people in this room, because I think people in this room are out there talking and being active. But we've got to have a groundswell of people actually getting the truth out about the pharmaceutical industry, about our need for drugs, about how the system works, how the economics work, what happens when they don't work. For example, my son is a doctor, and we were just talking about something, and he said, just out of the blue, thank goodness that we finally have a bill where the government gets to negotiate drug prices. And I thought, this is my own son saying this. I thought, my gosh, if my own son is saying this, we are not having the right conversations.
No.
We are not having the right conversations. And I said, oh, roll that back. Just roll that back, and let me tell you about the IRA and about the tax, the tax burden, and the fact that this is not a voluntary discussion. We need to have, and he looked at me like a deer in headlights. He said, I'm in the medical field. No one in the medical field knows that that's actually not a voluntary discussion, or actually understands what's going on. So these conversations are not taking place, and the people who need to know them don't know.
Well, therein lies the problem, right? If you're going to lie big,
Yeah.
and the bigger and bolder the lie is, the more people are going to believe it.
Yeah.
And it's usually because the lie is very simple. Patents kill. This is a voluntary negotiation. Never mind what happens if you don't voluntarily agree to what the government is offering you. But we're going to, that's a really good setup for our next panel, which is going to be on myths and misconceptions. We're going to set the record straight. But thank you very much, Sherry, for kicking us off.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.